But tonight, we're going to discuss the summer sensation of 2016, Pokemon Go, and we're going to explore what made it such a phenomenon, and then also maybe why there's been a drop-off in recent weeks. Just last week, it was dethroned as the top-grossing app for iPhone. So we're going to explore that a little bit too with our panel of experts here. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we're going to get started.
Great. Hi, my name is Assem Nasr. I am an assistant professor at the Department of Communication. My expertise lies in media industries, media and culture, particularly global media, but I'll stop there.
Okay. My name is Andres Montenegro. I'm an associate professor of computer animation. I teach in the Department of Visual Communication and Design. And yep, that's it.
My name is Aleshia Hayes, and I'm an assistant professor in computer science. And my area of expertise is I like to play games. No. Actually, also my area of expertise is modeling and simulation. But what I teach here, I teach computer science, and we also have a game development club. So I lead a lot of game development. My industry experience is game design and evaluating games and VR, and I dabble.
And I'm Chad Seawald. I'm the owner of Sweet So Geek here in town. 2010 honors graduate here from IPFW, and more importantly, a level 22 Team Valor member.
Nice.
And so we're excited to have all of them here. All of them have individual expertise, and that's why I've asked them to come, because when we ask a question, why do we want to catch them all, or why is a particular object or game a phenomenon that breaks through in the media, that becomes a top-grossing app in iPhone, we can answer that question from a lot of different perspectives. And so that's what's great about having a comprehensive university here in our region, to have the resources to be able to speak to many different areas of expertise. And so the structure of tonight's event is going to be asking each member of the panel to answer the question in the title. Why do we want to catch them all? What makes Pokemon Go a success? After that, we'll do some follow-up questions and discussion between panel members, and we'll end the event with your questions for the panel, and we'll go from there. So we're going to begin with Professor Montenegro, who is an expert in computer animation, and we're going to begin with a video. So I think the panelists, we're going to head down and sit in the front row so we can watch the video, and then Professor Montenegro is going to make some comments. We'll come back, and we'll continue with our discussion.
Pokemon Go is built on. Basically, that video shows two elements. One is the city, because it's a physical object that is laid out in the floor, so you can discover what is happening inside each block, but each block contains an image that definitely triggers the animation and triggers the whole world. Yeah? In fact, this technology is not like the one Pokemon Go is built, but the principle is the same. It's basically triggering 3D worlds, 3D objects, 3D animations in such a way that will be very, very immersive. In fact, you can definitely use this technology together with other elements like, for example, glasses, cell phones, iPads, or the popular today is becoming more prevalent, the Oculus Rift or other head-mounted devices for virtual reality. But in fact, this is the approach. What was the purpose of showing this video? In fact, Pokemon Go is having a global impact because of the mass production of content. So we can see that this global event, this global phenomenon is based on augmented reality. In fact, the device created by the technology created by this company, which is actually the name, I cannot remember exactly the name, but Niantic. Niantic is based on geolocators that then you can have some autonomy to interact with Pokemons in every place that you are. So in fact, this capture is based on a simple interaction. So drag and drop and then capture the Pokemon, the character, and then you get points, and then maybe you can earn some rewarding elements with this capture. But it's definitely based on the principle of augmenting elements on top of physical objects. However, the purpose of showing this video is to emphasize that this technology has a lot of potential for education, for science, for collaborative research, and of course for entertainment. But the more important thing here is how we are able to get inspiration from Pokemon Go at the college level. Not only to play with Pokemons, but basically Pokemon for me is inspiration. I've been working with this technology for almost 6 years, and then it's becoming more and more powerful, and the modality of using a geolocator in the Pokemon game is one of the things that you have available. Perhaps the most, I think, practical, But in fact, in the near future, we will have more and more and more elements to interact with augmented reality. So it's amazing the way how this is becoming more prevalent in everyday devices and everyday experiences. In fact, for education, so we have an excellent opportunity to turn this content immersive, but also it's the opportunity to use a gaming action for a very interesting purpose, which is actually manipulating the content, using the content in a very positive way, but also actually kind of topple the myth about that gaming is just a sort of lazy activity. Then you can go and discover the world with these devices, with the iPad, with glasses, or with this combination of technology for wearable devices. So it's in fact something that you combine different ways of interaction. Tactile interaction, interactive manipulation of objects. That in fact is definitely the dream of holograms. In fact, this will become known in the near future as holograms things. Yeah, it's in fact that's the practical thing of this. Yeah, but in fact, the idea of generating content is my goal. So in fact, this technology will help us to transform the map of social interaction, especially using our bodies, yeah, our hands, yeah, our body as a computer interface or an interactive media, yeah. Well, what is the challenge that Pokemon Go is actually putting up on the context of a college environment? We have to generate content, yeah? And this idea of presenting this video, it was to show you that pretty much with kind of very small, yeah, sort of interaction, you can make things very, very interesting. In fact, the Pokemon Go interaction is very simple. You don't have to become involved with these things in a very sophisticated way. Yeah, just point, grab, and capture. That's it. Very simple. And that is definitely the thing. Yeah, and if you have, for example, something here in this environment, like a map, and then this challenge is to find things hidden here in this environment, that will be amazing. Yeah, that engage, especially children. Yeah, because it's very simple. Find something, catch up, and then keep it. Well, for all the kind of more sophisticated gaming interactions, maybe it's not very appealing or not very exciting. But the Pokemon Go phenomenon shows that this simple interaction really, really can be massive and can be very inspiring. Right now, the idea of this development is to have little things that can be very, very significant for education, for art installation, for definitely becoming aware about what the world can be. So our environment can be something that we can discover, something that we can interact with, and more important thing, the content. Yeah? So in fact, if you are able to develop a content, in this case, animations, models, and turn them out in something that will engage the audience, that will be awesome. That's exactly the thing that Pokemon Go is doing. Yeah? I don't know if this craze is still going, or is fading, or I don't know. But the more important thing is that Pokemon Go inspire me a lot. Yeah? And so probably the next moves or the next steps is to define a line of little characters. Yeah, probably in the video you appreciate these characters dancing or moving. Yeah, that's simple. Yeah, but if you provide this character a sort of nice charm and kind of cute looking, yeah. So you can make your local version of Pokemon, yeah? You can make your own things, small things that can be maybe not as important or as global like Pokemon, but you can use them for many things, for storytelling, yeah? For museum introduction, museum tours, yeah? Even here on campus, you can develop an application of augmented reality to show the viewers or the visitors, yeah, what the assets available in campus, yeah, how you can discover the campus, how you can discover departments, how you can visualize information. So I see a great potential in this tool. The only thing is definitely how to provide the access, yeah, in our classes to the students that are interested in developing content, and how this can be delivered. In fact, one thing that will be very important to encourage the students is that, okay, publish this. Yeah? Go to the Android store and then the Apple store, and then put these applications available for everyone. And that will be a perfect opportunity to create local companies, yeah, that can engage in training. Yeah, so it's very interesting when you have this tool for training. In fact, if you do or develop an application that teach or train how to assemble a machine or assemble a system, so that will be very funny because it's something that you are going to enjoy from A to Z, yeah? And it's going to be kind of fascinating because you're going to start a journey in, yeah, discovering the content. Maybe it's more appealing, more entertainment than opening a book and then, okay, read the book. Maybe that will be a more dynamic interaction, yeah? Something that you can discover, something that you can start chasing, yeah, and then interact with. It's definitely interactive content that for the first time become immersive. So this is actually my experience. I don't know if you have questions about this or maybe start a sort of discussion. Maybe it's that is. Okay, yep.
So that was a fascinating approach via the view of computer science and digital animation. There's a lot to think about in what Professor Montenegro had to say, but one of the things that most sort of came out in his comments was towards the end pointing out that this is more dynamic than a book, for example. And one of the things we know is that Pokemon Go is related to older forms of media, to the past of its contemporary users. So I think this is a great way to hand off the discussion to Dr. Nasr to talk a little bit about what made Pokemon Go in particular, besides a simple interface, besides engaging with the content, break through and become the spectacular success that it has been.
I think this is a hard question to answer, especially from my discipline where we look at users and what is it exactly that they look for in games and things like that. But one thing for sure is that Pokemon Go basically capitalized on a history that has already been there, right? So we all remember in the late 1980s, or sorry, was it 1990s? 1990s. You know, the exchanges of these cards, the things that we, you know, the Pokemon we saw on television and so on. This became sort of a fad of sorts. So it's interesting to think about how it took a couple of decades in order for this game to come about. Well, definitely because of the technological innovation and, you know, the GPS interface or, you know, correlation there. But it's also because the thought that since everybody has a smartphone, everybody, you know, the age that was familiar with Pokemon back in the day of exchanging cards and whatnot and kind of scoring these cards and having them, now is more technologically advanced. They have access to Wi-Fi, and it just makes a perfect fit to bring back a technology and kind of repeating its history and kind of banking on this. So from a media perspective, I think I can look at it from a franchise scope, so to speak. In my generation, we grew up reading, you know, Batman comics or Superman comics. Oh, lo and behold, we have a film that is, you know, on steroids, so to speak, with all the special effects and all things that are going in, right? So that marketability of a character with which we are already familiar kind of drives that force and brings us to that. But it's interesting because, again, from my disciplinary standpoint in how we look at media and its interaction or their interaction with society, you mentioned how this is an interactive force. This is something that invites people to, you know, get outside and go looking for, you know, throwing Pokeballs at their targets and scoring more and so on. But then you hear about the fears, right? We always have those apocalyptic thoughts with some people. Oh my goodness, this is going to be the end of it all and what have you. I have no judgment on that. I'm just wondering what you guys think about it with your own experience. But one thought is that while it did invite people to get off the couch and head outside, some people are still arguing that this is not like exercise. this is making this, it's walking is not really running. For the record, I'm the last person who should comment on exercise, so let's just leave it out there. But I'm just wondering, I'm curious to hear what you all have to say about that and about this technology and its relationship to society.
I could address just the walking thing and say that I am not as much of an avid gamer as some people who are close to me, but I have one friend, for instance, who the American Heart Association recommends that we take 10,000 steps a day for a healthy heart. I sometimes get up to 6,000 if I haven't run that day. I have friends who, while playing Pokemon Go, have maxed over 21,000 steps in a day from walking. So while I do agree that maybe for some people it's not exercise, but it is more exercise than probably they would have gotten with their traditional sedentary lifestyles. Not to mention the fact that when you think about the fact that John Hankey, who was the CEO of Niantic and conceptualized this Ingress game that Pokemon Go is built on, one of the reasons why he wanted to make this game is because his son was also a gamer, and he's a gamer and a game designer and a game developer, and he also is a programmer for Google and a giant CEO, brilliant person. But the reason why he wanted to do this partially was because he wanted to get his son outside, moving around. Of course, they live in the Bay Area, so that kind of hurts me. Which speaks to, I think, part of one of the questions that we're having right now, which is why is there kind of this dip, this lull that's happening? Well, part of it, for me at least, I can say, is my kids are back in school. So we were spending a lot of time walking around when it was hot and they had more free time. And so I was getting a lot of steps this summer. And now that my kids are back in school and I'm taking them to track practices and I'm working because now I'm back in school also, I'm not getting over 6,000 steps a day. I'll just put it that way.
So you're trying to suggest that, January, February, Indiana is not the fertile ground for Pokemon Go?
Probably not so
It's going to
much.
be hard.
Yeah,
I doubt you're going to see people at the old fort as they are now till 2 and 3 in the morning every single night of the week when it comes to winter. Even here at the Children's Garden all summer long, it was, you'd find 30 to 70 people, huddled around that sort of thing. I can speak the fact this summer I lost 25 pounds walking around, with my kids and averaging a heck of a lot more activity than I normally do, even in a 90-hour work week at the store. So yeah, there's absolutely, a fact of getting kids out and about and doing things. But if we want to talk about the dip and the reason why it's kind of, lost, I honestly believe it has to do with simple gamer mentality as well as lack of content. It's gotten to a point now where people are having a hard time collecting all of the Pokemon. Or it's the fact that you've got people who have reached such a high level, they've taken it to another course where it's hard for the everyday person to stay involved. Whereas in the beginning, you could walk out, oh my gosh, that's a Pidgey. My wife and I now call those trash Pokemon. Now it's kind of lost a little bit of that appeal. When you reach to a certain level, getting to the next level becomes almost an impossible fact, unless you're able to spend 20 to 30 hours a week doing it. I don't have that time. So it's really kind of moved to a point now where it's almost impossible for the average person to stay involved. If you want to try and battle a gym and you don't have a Pokemon over a 2,000 CP, good luck. It's those sort of things where, for me, and I've had arguments with other business owners as we were working on creating events and all of that around Pokemon. I never wanted to really involve the gyms. To me, the whole, gotta catch 'em all aspect was the biggest factor to really get as many people involved as possible. The gyms add a level of competition, and the moment you start adding that level of competition in, you're immediately shunting a certain group of society out. Because there's always going to be people that take things too far. And Pokemon Go is an absolute example of that.
Yeah, there are a couple points that all of you have built on. Sort of And I want to start with the gamer mentality that Chad was just speaking about, the sort of the push and pull between the average user and and the gamer, for lack of a better word. And I was wondering if Aleshia, you, given your background in game development,
She's busy catching Sheldon right now.
I have to catch this thing because with the augmented reality now I can have evidence that I've presented to people about Pokemon Go while playing Pokemon Go, and this is going to go in my resume. I think if I can
You're
get this
augmenting
to
your CV right now.
yes,
Is what you're doing.
yes.
Okay.
So just give me 1 second. I got the photo. We're
Excellent.
good. I didn't even have to catch the Sheldon. I'll get that later. So the question?
So thinking in your background in game development, the gamer mentality, so to speak, I wonder if you can sort of talk about the push and pull within Pokemon of it being a game for gamers and being a game for the casual user. So at least part of what makes it attractive is, it was easy to go out and get the trash Pokemon, as Chad pointed out, and that really built the user base. But we're moving into a sort of gamer mentality. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that with your background and your knowledge. Talk about how it worked as a game and how it's maybe changed.
So I can address this from 2 angles, one of the academic and one of a person. So I'll start with the academic perspective. So as a game designer, one of the things we look at, there's a model called the Bartle's player types. So this guy, I think his name is William, but his last name is Bartle, and he has these 4 player types that he says somewhere along a spectrum all players fall into, and you can kind of imagine it like a grid. And so generally he says players are achievers, they are competitors, or no, achievers and competitors are the same thing. They're killers, they're explorers, and they are I have an acronym in my head so I don't forget it when I get nervous. There's another one, and I will remember it in a minute. But all of us fall somewhere along here. And the thing about successful games is generally, social. The S is social, the one that I am. So the thing about very successful games is they generally hit all of these areas. And Pokemon Go does exactly that because you get to have the battling and, of course, something like capturing the Pokemon. And you get the social element, which, ironically, the social element in Pokemon is more about walking around with people, not actually within the game, but the interaction. Like, I've been in places, so I'm kind of adding my personal elements to this. I've been in places where I've talked to people, like even on this campus, I would never talk to a man walking around at night on this campus normally. But so I saw a guy and he's walking around and he's clearly searching for Pokemon. I'm like, oh, what did you get? And we had just these random conversations that you normally wouldn't have because you have what in communication they often refer to as some kind of common ground or some shared history, some shared background. So Pokemon gives us that. So I do agree that what you're saying, that the different leveling of people now, some people are totally overpowered and Pokemon, so that makes it frustrating. But still at some level, I can break it down to the very most easy level. I'm a gamer and I play games that require flight, throttle, and stick and complex thoughts. My daughters are 10 and 11, so many of the games I play they can't play yet. But we can play for hours, and that's actually how I found Sweet So Geek, because we were going around and looking for Pokestops, and we found that event that you were having, and so my daughter and I were driving around for literally hours, just driving across town looking for Pokestops and talking and walking and meeting new people. So I do think that the element of social connection for Pokemon is one of the most huge elements. And then, of course, what Dr. Montenegro said, the idea that you can make something that would otherwise be not so animated, like a Pokemon card. Basically now, instead of trading a Pokemon card, you have this animated Pokemon, which I don't know if everyone knows the difference between the augmented reality version of Pokemon Go and the version where the background is just this pretty grass field. Because not everyone turns that on.
I think the difference is how much data it uses.
Oh, well, definitely
Trust
the data.
me, I can tell you when I get the bill from my daughter's usage.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
But for me, I just think it's cool because I had friends who never turned it on to augmented reality. But for me, what I was able to do just now, take a picture of a Pokemon overlaid on top of you guys, is kind of the beauty of augmented reality, the fact that you can augment. We have heard the word augment before in other parts of our lives we want to address. So if you can think of augmenting as opposed to improve or enhance something, so we can augment reality, any reality, with technology. And that's really, to me, like really exciting. And especially when you think of being able to pull in game elements to even the most boring things like walking around.
Great. I think sort of talking about that social element is, I mean, that's perhaps one of the most unique things about the Pokemon Go experience in developing what you call common ground. And it makes me think of what Assem was talking about earlier, the sort of franchise aspect or developing, or this sort of push and pull between a community of users and then this sort of community of fear or fear of, you know, of someone sort of entering the community. But that was part of, at least part of some media stories surrounding the phenomenon. But I wanted to ask Chad a little bit about this idea of community or idea of franchise, idea of, you know, sort of identifying with, you know, a community surrounding a particular franchise or character, which is something that maybe relates a little bit to the types of things you do at your store. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you guys do and then maybe how you integrated Pokemon Go into that.
I've been a geek all of my life. I learned to read from the X-Men comics, the Dark Phoenix saga specifically, which if you've read that, it's ridiculous and I shouldn't have been allowed to even touch it when I was 4. But lo and behold, that's what I learned to read from. I've learned pastry arts back before I was married, working my way up from a dishwasher at a 5-star restaurant and becoming a pastry chef. And then wanted to have a family. And if you've ever been in a restaurant business, restaurants and families don't go together. So I left that. And after getting my degree and being far too poor to teach, I went to corporate America, was unhappy every single day, and then got back into doing pastries and chocolates. One of the very first things I ever made, because yes, I'm a dad, so almost everything I do is built around a dad joke now, was our Han Rolo. Caramel-filled chocolate Han Solo. Gave it away to just some friends. They said, "Why aren't you selling these?" I'm like, "Really? Someone's going to buy this?" And now, 4 years later, this is my full-time job. Not only do we do chocolates, we do custom cakes. We're doing the cake for the alumni function here next week on the 7th. You know, a huge 5-tier cake that we're giving away to everybody. We've done all sorts of events. This past January, we had a Harry Potter themed day, tapping into another franchise. In January, people waited 3 hours to come into our store just to buy Harry Potter themed treats. I was blown away to a point where now, next year, we're partnering with Salvation Army and turning it into a charity event. So, you know, we've built upon the concept of franchises and geek and that love of different concepts. And what we tell people, and I've said this in several interviews I've had a chance to do, being a geek does not mean that you love a particular thing, like, you know, a fandom or something along those lines. It means that you'd be willing to do something and be in part of something whether you got paid to do it or not. I have friends who absolutely, for no other reason than they can't stop themselves, have collections of paper because they love the way the paper feels. They're paper geeks. My dad plays golf every single weekend, no matter what, from late March all the way to the end of November. He is a golf geek. He would do it whether, you know, he was a city champ or not. All those people are welcome at our shop. When you walk in, you're welcome. And that's really what we try and do, is open things up. You know, we do community events. For Pokemon Go, we immediately jumped on. We were not a Pokestop ourselves, unfortunately, because Inverness, where it was built on, we were after Inverness, so we didn't quite hit that database. But we were around several other Pokestops, and we have Pokeball chocolates that we made within 3 days of the game coming out, because I knew immediately it was going to be a huge craze. We created tours of the area because we had 17 Pokestops, 6 gyms, all within a 1.5 block radius of our store. So we started leading people around to show them all the different places and you know, giving tips and tricks as we did it. And, I know other business owners who have, they spent money to have constant lures in place. I know people that had custom items built for their store saying we're a Poke Gym and all of that. That went a little too far in my mind, and those people have actually kind of lost money on the endeavor. For us, it was more of a matter of, I knew it was a fad. I knew, as a gamer and a geek, it wasn't going to hold everyone's attention forever. And that's why we're seeing that sort of drop off once again. But yeah, it was an amazing event for the summer, and I think that's kind of what it will be. And hopefully Niantic will jump in and realize that they need to do some, bring in a lot more of the social aspect and bring things back to that. And I think they could bring it back again, bring in a whole nother wave. They have, I think, 450 Pokemon or more now. I could bring my son and he could tell you the names of every single one of them, but bring in more that people can catch, and make it easier to catch them all. That's, the collector mentality would also help a lot.
Yeah, those are some really great points, and it kind of brings us back to where we started with Professor Montenegro's comments, which was sort of really focused on content generation, and Andres, you were talking about. I mean, it was really exciting and sort of builds on what is a sort of common theme across all of us, which is sort of talking about community, which was one of the things that was really great about Pokemon Go, of sort of being able to do this yourself and to put it out in the world and to connect. And so I wonder if you could talk, if there were someone in the audience, many of them are your students, so they might know, but if there was someone, say, listening to this on TV, and they wanted to begin to approach this, what would you recommend to them? How would they go about beginning to create content? Or if they have ideas for content, how could they partner with someone and build community to try and develop their own ideas?
It's very important to recognize applications in the App Store, in Android and in Apple Store, that you can download and install in your cell phone or in your iPad. One of them is Orasma, the other one is Metaio, but today we have more and more small applications that generate content of augmented reality, and then you can combine basically pictures and then turn the picture interactive and then combine with or glue the pictures to a model. Yeah. However, the process of content generation in augmented reality takes a more serious approach when you have a learning process that is more formal, because you need to know exactly how, for example, you set an environment, set a virtual camera, or create a character or an animation, and that is turning the adventure of learning augmented reality in a more serious business. Because the idea, if you are generating content, is to create something innovative or something that is coming to a simple thing, but at the end will be so significant to a user. In fact, the experience that I had in classes and as an artist as well is to discover that the very simple interaction could be very important for a user. Yeah, and so if you have an array of sophisticated elements to play in a game, so probably the user become pretty much overwhelmed by this, or the engagement of the application will become kind of detached from the social interaction. So in fact, what is more important in this generation of content is that you definitely identify short things or small things that could be interesting to develop. For example, drag and drop, yeah? For example, use the cell phone or the iPad, accelerometer, yeah? These are elements that are built in our devices. The problem is that they are kind of underutilized, yeah? However, the Pokemon Go, yeah, proves that this turns our devices, cell phones and iPad, into a sort of smart devices, yeah, They have more than you imagine. Yeah, and my advice for students that want to become engaged in the content development is that if you think in a very simple interaction, think that interaction in something that will be socially significant. For example, what Aleshia is mentioning is to walk. You see, it's simple. You don't need a more actually sophisticated physical activity to definitely develop interaction, or to approach basically to a specific places where you can find something, maybe in a forest, basically. Yeah, you start a sort of adventure. So under the trees, you're going to find something hidden, or under a stone. So it's definitely the purpose of this technology is to convert our world, our surrounding world, in an amazing array of metaphors. In fact, the one that you see in the video is a metaphor of a city, yeah? And I become aware of about this metaphor when I say, well, what can do more interesting than holding the iPad and pointing this in this direction, and then, okay, I'm gonna make this layout of a city, and then each block of the city will have a story, you see? That simple thing becomes engage the viewer. And in fact, I present this experience in Science Central in the Arts United Taste of Art Festival. And the people actually, it was very impressive because the people told me, oh, this is magic. But it's very simple. You have an animation connected with the target and then it triggers. But that fact, you see, that you point the camera of the device to a physical object and then suddenly a three-dimensional thing is coming up and is animated, that turns the whole thing into, oh, that's magic. But if you start
into an experience rather than just an.
In fact, that's the thing that I was going to talk about, because this is not new. In fact, technology provide this more friendly approach to the content development, because the experience, the work experience, is pretty much related with what we do with our bodies. In fact, today, the interaction of drag and drop or walking maybe will be dancing or use the iPad or the cell phone accelerometer to produce or to move characters around us, you see? So these are elements that I'm actually committed to study. In fact, we can definitely interact with this virtual world because these characters or animations, in fact, are other reality, yeah? So are becoming a new reality that is going to be embedded in the real world. Yeah.
And so sort of building on that, the relationship between the sort of digital and sort of real world, which is another one of those hallmarks that really made Pokemon Go unique. I was really fascinated by the point that you made that some of these things are really quite simple with the amazing computers that we carry around in our pockets now.
Exactly. That's the reason. Excuse me.
Sure, go ahead.
This is not a new phenomenon. So in the 70s, an artist named Myron Krieger developed this device. It was totally interactive, you see. But he was an artist, and at the same time, he was a computer scientist. And he conceived this whole interaction based on what the body can do. So in fact, this was the beginning or the foundations of the concept of human-computer interface. And it's not new, so it's having a time frame of more than 40 years, because this piece created by Myron Krieger called Video Plays was made in 1974. And it's amazing because it was the first experience of using your body and having interaction with figures in the virtual world with computers.
These are really great points, and I want to bring in the other panelists into the conversation, because a lot of what you're saying, I think, really builds on. I just sort of go back to one of the points that Assem made in his comments, is sort of talking about in the field of communication and media studies. You think a lot about what users and viewers and readers and what are they doing with these things? How do they relate to them? What are they thinking? And one of the interesting things that Andres points out is like the border between user and creator is becoming narrower and narrower and narrower as we have these amazing tools that we carry around in our pockets. So I wonder, Assem, if you guys think about these things at all, like the relationship between, a culture that, sort of puts YouTube videos up on the web, that, that Andres points out that we can now create these new, our own augmented realities, that users, become creators and creators are users. How do you guys think about those issues?
Well, from the instance where you're approaching this from a technological standpoint, this is certainly a breakthrough technology. I mean, we're kind of exponentially growing in that realm. The question that I would pose is in terms of access, right? Because, I mean, Chad, you mentioned that, right? And you have people who are well advanced in this game and can, access this, and now what, right? But this access basically comes at a price in terms of time, in terms of, being able to purchase a smartphone, being able to be part of this. Now, yes, we are talking of a game, but you also, open the door to some amazing things that we could do with it. And when we do that, what happens with social inequalities? So let's look at it from a global scale, right? July 6th, was it 2016 when Pokemon came out? It came out in Australia, June. Okay, one of those J months. Goodness, right? But one thing is that first of all, it opened in Australia, I think, and the United States, and a couple of other places, and it's growing and growing in Europe and other places as well. Think about those places where we don't have what kind of Wi-Fi access do we have on our phones these days? Is it 4G, or have we reached the fifth? Right. So think of places where we don't have that. Think of places where we don't have as good of an access to Wi-Fi or to internet technologies to begin with. I think very much people will be at a disadvantage. And given that context, we are kind of producing something that is going very global. We talk about a society that's been everybody's. Aleshia, I love that example where we're making connections with other people, right? So these are cultural products that bridge the world in so many ways and in a very positive way. But the flip side of this is that you have people who are being left out. So wherever this technology is going beyond the game to something more productive, to something more productive in the sense of elemental to our own lives, the more we become connected to technology with our bodies, I'm just cautious about how this is going to affect people of lower income communities that are disadvantaged by technical barriers as well as accessibility and so on.
Does anybody want to respond to Assem's comments? This idea of inclusion through Pokemon Go, which through the casual gaming, it was an inclusive technology, but sort of going back to that gamer mentality idea we were talking about, that it reaches a certain threshold and becomes less inclusionary the more advanced it gets.
Oh, go ahead.
So I totally agree with you on that. I frequently, being in development and computer science, I frequently talk to people who are developers who make these sweeping assumptions about what the community is. Like they'll say things like, oh, well, people are going to be using Apple Pay and Samsung Pay in the next few years and everything else is going to become obsolete. And I'm like, wait, do you forget how much a smartphone is? We're privileged. If we can forget how much a smartphone is, many people in my family still have passed flip phones. I'm very proud of my grandmother and my dad for that, but they definitely don't have $700 or even $500 or $400 iPhones or Galaxies, things like that. So I totally agree that that's an issue, especially when, like in the IST 160 class, we talk frequently about accessibility and we talk about access to the internet and bring your own device. Like they say this in conferences and things all the time, like BYOD BYOD, bring your own device is the new trend. Even on campus, the expectation used to be that there would be so many labs everywhere so people would have access. I remember in 1998, I went to Paris and I got to go to Versailles, and they had email computer stations set up around Versailles, and that was very high tech. But they don't need that anymore because they have Wi-Fi access points. So I totally agree with you that this creates, if we're not careful and thinking about different levels of socioeconomic class in our society, the fact that now if I go to Versailles, if I can pay the $14 to get in, but I can't buy a smartphone because I don't have that kind of money, which I didn't when I went, I wouldn't be able to send emails from there, which I was able to do back then. So I do think that it's a consideration, especially emails from Versailles, that's kind of still a luxury. But say you have a class where the expectation is that students are experiencing the virtual reality and the textbook and augmented reality surgeries and things like that, and you say, oh, well, go to this website, which I even have students here at IPFW who tell me, I have to do all of this at campus because my internet connection at home is terrible, or my internet is turned off, because these are still bills that people have to pay. So I do think it's an outstanding point to bring up.
I think when talking about gaming, though, and especially Pokemon Go, it is a luxury thing, and simply looking at it as something that could be inclusive, it being a luxury item, I don't think it's something to worry about at this point. My entire store is kind of built on luxury purchases, and there are many times where I've counseled customers coming in saying, I want to buy this cake, and like, well, can I put it on a payment plan, or do you take food stamps? I'm like, maybe this isn't necessarily, this $100 cake isn't necessarily the best purchase for this, and I'm not afraid to turn around and say that to people. Does it hurt my bottom line? Maybe. But does it mean then that their bottom line is going to be better? Yeah. And that's what I think, if you really want to talk about inclusion and luxury purchases and all that, what we have to worry about more than anything else, not necessarily the developers and all of that, technology and where it's at, but teaching people responsibility. And that's a whole nother issue.
Right. I mean, especially when Pokemon Go basically goes hyper commercial, so to speak, right? So I mean, it's amazing the crossovers and the mergers, and you spoke about that, how people are setting up gyms and setting up lures or whatnot, right? Like Wendy's, you get a Frosty if you show up and box that whatever.
Yeah.
At some point.
At one point, yeah.
Right?
If you were to catch one at a Wendy's and post your picture online, you can get free items.
Well,
a lot of places did that.
Yeah. T-Mobile offered, T-Mobile Tuesdays, right, where so that you don't rack up the thing and so on. But again, it seems to be oriented towards the commercialization of this game when it's a free download. So let's see how this is also going to affect in its development. How you're going to end up needing to buy the paraphernalia, all the things that come with it. But yeah, gaming aside, gaming is that luxury, right? But gaming aside, when we talk about this technology as the great potential that Andres was talking about, I mean, what an optimistic, great view that we have of it. But with the same notion, we kind of wait a second. Are we all there yet?
I think technology itself takes care of that in some ways.
Yep.
Once it becomes commercialized, for example, this exact same technology is now used for advertising purposes. The Dark Tower movie coming out soon has their own app called the Sombra app, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan, so I immediately downloaded it. They did an issue of Entertainment Weekly with the Dark Tower, and there were interactive pictures, exactly like what you were showing in your video, that would have only for people who had this app and the content.
Yeah.
But that's
I think it's
that commercialization of it
right.
will allow then for the technology to make enough money to make it to where it becomes, in my mind, a widespread item. If we look at internet in general, the fact that early days, I mean, I was back in the days of Prodigy, that was, I had, up until about 3 years ago, still had a Prodigy email address just because I could say I did. But if you looked at how internet and how it was based, even the AOL days, which I call the dark ages of internet, all of those sort of things built the way to where we're at now. And it will, now we're at a Wi-Fi period at a point where hopefully within the next, in my mind, 10 to 15 years, Wi-Fi will be pervasive across the United States. That's, been,
But Chad, sorry, not to cut
And
you
guys,
off.
I do want to say we just have a couple more minutes, so we can go ahead and finish up
I'll
the
make it short,
conversation
and
here.
I
Go
know
ahead.
Andres has something to say as well. But that said, in my opinion, I think that is exactly where the problem is, because of this form of competition and weeding out competition and so on, that we as users are going to be part of this weeding out process, right? I mean, think about introducing these legislations, for example, whether it's net neutrality, which thankfully the FCC had the mind enough to kind of not apply it or what have you. But think about how it's becoming more expensive, at least in my paying the bills experience, right? For my internet, it's just not going down. We're kind of with less competition, with more mergers. If you're thinking of the commercial model taking care of things, it's actually, in my opinion, it might end up limiting content, which goes directly to Andres's point about creativity and content. I'll stop here.
Well, one of the things that I want to remark in this is this phenomena, or the paradigm change of technology, is not new. Do you remember the Wii? Yeah. Everyone was actually expecting that this game, this technology, will change our behaviors, because we no longer are actually seated in front of a computer and then just moving the mouse and the keyboard. So, in fact, we were using our body to interact with the screen. But okay, where is now the Wii? It's just basically relegated to just a couple of interesting games that are hallmarks. But the thing is that it's there. Just one is another gaming interaction. That's not very interesting. But the more important thing that we have today is that Pokemon Go actually transformed the technological and the cultural landscape of the world. In fact, this is changing the paradigm of the relationship with our body with technology. In fact, it's becoming more significant for us because it's not only a gaming experience, it will be an everyday experience of connection with the content. So in fact, the content will evolve in a more digital experiences. In fact, our body will have the potential to connect with basic interfaces in every place that we stop. In fact, if you have your glasses here, maybe the glasses in the near future will be our helpers to find directions in a town or a city or wherever we are going. And also our fingers, you see, our hands will work as triggers to get information. And then, in fact, this is something that I've been researching as well. Today, the augmented reality is becoming hologram, and in fact, the object that you see with devices to visualize these experiences are changing the concept of the hypertext. In fact, hypertext will become more tactile in the near future. So you are going to be able to manipulate these holograms and then make this interesting phenomenological performance with your body. So in fact, this is not new, like explained before. Maybe for a computer science history class or for an animation class, this is going to be relevant. But when I teach the content of history of installation in art, I always bring out the experience of these artists like Myron Krieger or Jeffrey Cho, because they create this phenomena of using your body as an interface with a digital content. And Pokemon Go definitely is changing that paradigm.
Fantastic.
And it's very interesting, yeah.
I want to pass it to Aleshia and Chet for any final words, and then pairing up with community, we'll be inclusive and allow audience questions.
Okay, so there are kind of two major thoughts that I have right now, so I'll pick one and hope that the other one comes up. Because everyone's asking this question, so I'll address the question of the hype about Pokemon Go and the lull now. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that there's actually a model that we talk about in computer science and just talking about emerging technology in general called Gartner's hype cycle. If you take my class, I talk about it a lot. And Gartner's hype cycle basically tells
Which
us...
class? Can you tell us which class that is?
Well, the IST 160 class, so information systems, and also I teach a class that's really only for computer science and information systems students right now, although I'm trying to expand it, but it's called human-computer interaction, and where we do development, like we do develop apps and other software, virtual reality experiences. But like I said, largely is just targeted for CS and IS students. But in these classes, we talk about Gartner's hype cycle, and Gartner's hype cycle shows us that over and over and over again, and if you Google this, it's actually really interesting to look at Gartner's hype cycle. Over and over again, this is how technology emerges. There's a technology trigger, then there is, if it's a good technology, a peak of inflated expectations. So that's the time when everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, and it's gonna change the world, why am I gonna die, blah. And then, because everyone gets so ridiculously overhyped, it's like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. No, it's really not. Then everyone drops down into what they call, my favorite part, the trough of disillusionment. It sounds so sad. So this is the part where it's like, where a lot of people are at now with Pokemon Go. Oh, we thought this was going to be so good, but it really sucks. I can't believe we were so excited.
Why'd they take away my tracking?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we get to where we're going to go, I think, with this technology, even if not specifically with Pokemon Go. Remember, it's built on this platform that was Ingress, so just the concepts, like what Andreas is talking about, just the idea is still going to become immersive, well, not immersive, it's going to become pervasive, and that is what we call the plateau of productivity. So with many, many technologies, you can see it over and over again, this cycle. And so the plateau of productivity is where you get past the trough of disillusionment and you say, oh, well, it isn't exactly the best thing since sliced bread, but it is pretty awesome, and I can use it in these ways, and then you integrate it into your regular way of being. And that's, I think, where we're going to go with this, much like we're going to go with virtual reality. Some people are like, oh, it's all big hype with the Oculus and the HTC Vive. Yeah, it's way overhyped, but it also has its uses. So does the Internet of Things and the cloud. Is like all of these buzz terms people get super excited about. They're all great. They're never as great as we say they are, but then they're going to be good enough.
Completely agree with that. I guess kind of final thoughts. Number one, I invite everyone to come watch Young Frankenstein for free Saturday night at our shop, our last free movie night of the year. Second, as for Pokemon Go, to me it was an amazing trend this summer. You know, I won't call it necessarily a fad because it's still around. You know, it may have just gotten dethroned, but yeah, it's still, you know, where it's at. I'd love to be there. You know, I'd love to.
Still number two. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to own the business. In general, if you look at Pokemon's been around for 30 years. They chose an amazing franchise to start it with. It's something that appeals to, you know, people who were around when it first came out and were kids then. It appeals to, you know, kids now. I think one of the only worldwide trends that they could have chose that would have been just as strong would have been Star Wars. And who's to say there's not a Star Wars game coming down the pipe? To me, as long as companies are intent on creating licensed games like that, it's going to continue to bring people in. You know, the original content is I think what suffers more than anything else, and that's, you know, one of my personal thoughts. But as a business owner, I'll jump on the bandwagon and make a few extra bucks on it, and why not?
Wonderful. Well, why don't we give a round of applause to our panelists? And I want to invite, if there are any audience questions, if you can come up here to the mic. It would help just for TV, if you wouldn't mind coming to the mic. And there's a button you'll need to press so that the light will turn from orange to green. Just press the mute button on the front there. There you go.
Hi. This question is a bit more for Chad because he's probably more familiar with this. but I also relate to you, Chad. I am also a small business owner. I primarily make plushies of animals and such, and I'm most well known for my Pokemon plushes, and I rent it out of my dorm room. So obviously business has also been very lucrative for me over this summer. And I was intrigued about the possibility of an increase in, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, because Pokemon Sun and Moon will be coming out this November, and I'm intrigued on your thoughts on whether or not Pokemon Go will have a big influence on the release of a new Pokemon game, or do you think that it'll just kind of stay separate because of how Pokemon Go has more of a casual fan base, whereas the actual console games have a really heavy dedicated fan base?
I truly think that it's not going to make a big difference on, Pokemon Go. The reason why it had such a huge appeal is because of the number of people who have smartphones, how easy it was of a game to pick up and play. My wife, who was a huge Pokemon fan, made me watch the 2001 movie, which now my son has it on DVD on repeat, and my life, I almost wish for the days of Barney. I'll say that.
You don't sound too excited.
There's only so many times I can watch the same movie. I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. But for me, console gaming, it's a whole different audience. It's a whole different concept. This was a lightning in a bottle, Pokemon Go. I don't know, are they going to see a slight uptick in what they had previously in other games? Probably.
Well, what I'm interested in is the possibility of, since there's so many young children playing Pokemon Go, their parents might get them Pokemon Sun or Moon for Christmas and say, hey, look, there is this whole thing that this game is based off of, and it's kind of like a jump point for young children, because one of the biggest problems Nintendo has had with the past several Pokemon games is their fan base is getting older and older, and they're not bringing any young people. So that's something I could
Sure.
potentially see happening, but
Having talked with some of the different gaming shops around town that we partner with on different events, I can tell you that since Pokemon Go came out, there was, in July, a huge increase in the card game sales. So I'm trying to equate that to upcoming video games. But since then, it's been when they have weekend tournaments and things like that, it's been the same older crowd that shows up. So I think it may have hit that we're in the trough of despair, which I thought, wow, what a perfect symbolism for so many things in life. I'm going to use that forever.
now. That's really
Yeah.
good to know. I'll keep that in mind.
But
You should Google it. It's awesome.
I will.
I don't know. I'm afraid what else might come up with that.
Well, they have they do it every year, and they put all of the buzz technology along this to say where it's at. So conceptually, if you were an investor, you could use that to maybe predict.
Sure.
I don't know that I would trust it that much, but it is at least interesting.
Speaking of investors, it was funny how so many people invested in Nintendo when it came out, and then they realized, oh wait, Niantic made the game.
Yeah.
Whoops.
No, absolutely. No, I hope for the best for them. I know my son's super excited
looks
for
amazing.
Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
What I think the best thing that Nintendo could do, as they own Pokemon in general, is get on Niantic and say, hey, the moment we release this game, you need to release a whole other set of Pokemon from that game to be able to catch.
Yeah, the longer they postpone putting out the more generations, the more they're going to see people just not coming. I know so many people that have 5 or 6 Eevees, and they're waiting for when they can get their, Espeon and, this is embarrassing, I forgot the name, but you know what I mean.
I don't know the names, but I want the dark one. That's
Umbreon.
There we go. There
That's
we go.
the one I'm thinking
Yeah.
of.
No, I'm in the same way.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, my son says, hey, you can evolve this Eevee. I'm like, no, I'm just holding it. But yeah, it absolutely. They need to really keep things moving. They need to bring out more content. They need to make it easier for people to get to that 150 Pokemon. And I know, yes, they've said continent specific. There are certain ones you have to travel the world. Chris Hardwick, who I follow on Twitter and all that, went to Japan on his honeymoon. Still, absolutely could not find. I forget which one it is that's in Japan only. Farfetched. That's right. He could not find it in 7 days there. And he's like, that's it, I'm done. I can't collect them all. I'm not going back to Japan anytime soon. I'm done playing the game. Because there's a collector mentality that goes along with the whole thing, too. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Thank you. Yeah, so you want to come up to the microphone?
I will. Thank you, guys.
Before you ask your question, great shirt.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
It's the best one.
Oh, absolutely.
Empire is unmatched. I even like Muppets, but I don't care for Jedi. All right. This is mostly for Mr. Montenegro. This will be more in your expertise.
Uh-huh.
We have had iPhones since what, 2007? GPS for decades. Why did it take so long for someone to put these things together in a consumer product and make millions of dollars? I mean, we're 10 years into the smartphone business. We've had cameras in the phone for decades. Why do you think it took so long for someone to just get the idea to set the camera, the accelerometer, put it all together and sell it?
Yes, it's because the content development. Games actually are based on pretty much systems to run consoles and then platforms. But when you have a metaphor, and if this metaphor is powerful enough to motivate or to move people, to engage people, so then you can start thinking about the technology as the best resource to deliver that content. In fact, you mentioned that accelerometers, cameras in cell phones and iPads or other devices are available maybe 10 years from now, then is because visual content has the appealing to engage, you see, the developers and become aware about what this potential of the images or the content will do, or the impact that will have on the community or people. Unfortunately, the prevalence of technology in generations fades quickly, as Aleshia explained, you see. But right now we have a lot of potential related with technology. What is this potential? Through very basic interfaces, we can perform, very, very interesting and engaging activities. So that's the thing. If you don't have, for example, a very appealing metaphor, that motivates the interaction, technology will be pointless. And in this case, for example, everything in technology, everything in digital world, everything in computing is based on metaphors, real-world metaphors. So in fact, we are not totally detached from the real world. So in fact, technology is making a bridge between the real world and the digital world. That's actually the more important thing that I'm thinking about. And technology today is becoming more and more relevant and strategic, not only for entertainment, but for a process of discovering the world with a different view.
Does anybody else want to take that question too?
I agree with Professor Montenegro. I would also add, if you look at the evolution specifically of the game Pokemon Go, and this John Hanke, the CEO, he started working with maps like 15 years ago, trying to replace MapQuest, and he worked with Google for years and years, developing these things. And Pokemon Go is a unique kind of augmented reality in the sense that it's not just using tagging, it's also using your geolocation. And that's something that wasn't possible probably 10 years ago because he hadn't developed the technology. But then you also think of the fact that the framework that Pokemon Go is built upon is this Ingress game that is 6 years old. So they've been revising and evolving that game for years and building communities around it. And that game has been decently successful amongst geek communities, but not like mainstream the way that it is now. So I would say that that is also a big part of it. So the front end of technology, the end that we're thinking about, like the camera and the accelerometer and the gyroscopes and all these things, yes, those are available and have been available for a while, but the back end that we're developing this stuff on hasn't necessarily been available. And then that bridging the gap. And then the thing that I always like to say to my students is, you have to see a problem or a need or a want, something that you want or need. So it wasn't until John Hanke saw that there was this need in his own personal life that he wanted to solve for his son to get off of his butt and stop just sitting in front of his computer all the time and actually go outside. And that's what he was like, well, I have been thinking about doing this kind of thing for a while, but then there's that activation energy that drives you to stop just thinking about doing something, which all of us on this panel have done interesting things with our lives that we can say, there's a point at which you decide, I'm going to do this thing. So at some point, this guy decided, like when you say, why did it happen? At some point, John Hankey decided, this is the time that I'm actually going to make this a priority, making this experience.
And I would actually argue that technology brought us to the point for Pokemon Go, but before that, we've had GPS, as you said, forever and a day. We took what we had available, and a huge business was built on that. GPS technology for cars. You know, and if you look at it, just people didn't turn it into a game.
Right.
You know, but there was software available even for those GPS units for games and geocaching and things along those lines. It just took someone to take it to the next step, and building on Ingress and going from there. Yeah, I think that was the big factor.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question.
This is just kind of aimed at everybody, and specifically towards because he's on Valor, I'm on Mystic.
Okay.
I'm on the opposing team. You know the bad blood between the three teams. Why do you think there is so much bad blood between the three of us?
I completely disagree that there's any bad blood, and any bad blood that people believe there is, they've brought to it themselves. It's one of the major arguments I had from the very first day. I picked Team Valor for the simple fact that I've always wanted a candy apple red 65 Mustang. Didn't matter anything else. Not only that, but according to the descriptions as you did it, Team Valor believed in working hard to succeed on something. That's why I chose it. Team Mystic, if you ask people, why did you choose it? Well, early people, because I like blue. All right. Other people, like, oh, I really liked Articuno better than something else. Others like, oh, I love the way that the coach for that team was dressed. And then people created their own communities. You know, there's more Team Mystic than anybody else, and Team Valor seemed to, you know, red is an aggressive color. Maybe more people chose it and were more aggressive, and they had that sort of philosophy. I know people that are Team Instinct and say, you know, that they're absolutely the best and they're the smartest, and if you put them together, they must have the highest IQ total.
I'm Team Instinct. I can confirm this.
So, you know, if you look at it, it's absolutely, and this is one of the my biggest complaints early on, was creating that competitive aspect amongst things. Is one of the ways that would eventually, and I think it kind of goes into the law as well, created the competition that started the casual player to enjoy it less.
And that reminds me of the Bartles player types thing that I said, because some people are like the killers. I was trying to figure out exactly how killers play into Pokemon Go, but I guess that would be it. Maybe the hyper-aggressive teams, because I generally don't think of Pokemon Go as a game with killers, but I know sometimes when you show up at a Pokestop and people ask you what team you are, and then they just kind of like look at you if you're not in their team, you're like, oh.
Yeah,
usually, though, they're nicer.
Rather than a game that could bring everybody together, by putting the team elements into it, it suddenly segmented it. And, you know, for me, that was one of the failures on Niantic's part of creating the different teams in that fashion.
And actually something else that has been gnawing at the back of my head since this game was launched. Why do you think it's hard for some of the Pokemon to be caught and to be found in just like certain places, or in why are they so spread out and why are just some so exclusive?
I know that there are, I believe, 4 continent-specific Pokemon where you have to, you know, one for Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. There might be 5. They may have separated into South American as well. I know as well that Niantic has said that there are certain Pokemon that only show up during certain weather conditions in an area. There are certain Pokemon that only show up around certain geographical aspects.
That's nice. Yeah.
So, you know, if you're not around a mountain area, you're not going to have as many rock type. You know, so we're in the plains. What do we get the most of? trash Pokemon. You know, I mean, if I see another Rattata, I'm probably going to stop playing. I say that every time. I think I opened Pokemon Go today just to see if there happened to be a stop while we were here. That's the first time I've opened it in 4 days myself. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at, and just losing interest.
And also, why do you think there's not trading allowed between team members?
Not able to technologically do it in a comfortable way yet. They've said that they hope to update that soon, just not yet quite there.
Wonderful questions. We're going to have to end it there. I'm sure any of the panelists would enjoy speaking with you guys after the comments here. And I think ending on this idea of building community, which has kind of been a refrain for us in our conversation. I want to thank everybody for coming and invite you to come back October 18th, NEF 101, for our next University Community Conversation event on the Day of the Dead. We're going to explore how the celebration is lived locally. We're going to put it into a broader academic context, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much.
Thank you.